The memory of those lights, much too bright, sharper than I'd imagined, lingered above me as I stood in the center of that trembling stage, clutching my sketchbook until my knuckles went white. The microphone betrayed me. My voice quivered just enough to reveal the rehearsed confidence I'd tried so hard to muster. 7 people sat behind the long, polished table at the front of the room, expressions set in a bland professionalism. Some glanced downward at their phones, thumbs flicking as I fumbled through my words, my mouth sour with panic. My slides flipped by, each one glimpsing part of my collection, bold, oversized shapes in vivid color blocks, patterns born from my afternoons wandering the Seoul street markets, and scraps of hanbok fabric I'd bartered from the corners of Dongdaemun. My friends, drafted as last-minute models, peered out from the photos, wearing pieces I'd stitched during sleepless nights in my apartment. Nobody interrupted, but beneath the sterile quiet, I sensed their skepticism, a silent percussion that made me wish I could dissolve into the floor. At the end, I attempted a joke to lighten the mood. It fell flat. The lead investor, his glasses heavy with golden rims, tapped a pen and regarded me as if peering straight into my self-doubt. "Our investors search for scalable concepts, Miss Choi," he said, setting my presentation aside. "Your vision, it's niche, ambitious perhaps, but also impractical. Fashion is crowded, you know that." I bit my tongue. The right words clustered and stuck. I managed a nod, gathering my scattered portfolio as another panelist, a woman with red lacquered lips, tilted toward her neighbor and let her voice carry. "We don't fund costumes. We fund wearables." It strung deep. A few tired laughs rose, not loud but sharp enough. Afterward, I left the conference room alone, sketches jammed awkwardly beneath my arm. Outside, the night air bit through my blazer. Seoul's oblivious anonymity wrapped around me. You could cry in the subway here, I thought, and nobody would stare. Neon lights buzzed above, spilling sickly color on wet pavement. I walked home, listening to passing cars slice sheets of black water from the gutter. I didn't call my parents that night. I knew the words my mother would say: "It's time to wake up." "Not everyone gets to dream." My father would be silent, then urge me gently to consider something steady, something real. Even my brother, younger but already established, would joke that I was still stuck in my artist phase. The next afternoon, my mother arrived unannounced. She placed a bag of tangerines on my counter and silently began straightening up my tiny kitchen. I sat at the table, pretending to work on a new sketch, bracing against the invisible heaviness of her concern. She bent over my drawing, studying the half-formed lines. "Why not try something simple?" she finally asked, rubbing lotion into her hands. "Office clothes, things people wear." I said nothing. She checked the fridge, sighed, and nudged a container toward me. "Your cousin's wedding is soon. Everyone will be there. Maybe just wear something normal, okay?" She paused. "Don't worry too much." She wasn't asking, but her meaning was clear. Was I making enough to look after myself? I nodded, and she left. Lavender fragrance lingered. The following months blurred, a perpetual cycle of early alarms, a marketing internship I despised, and evenings spent hunched over my ancient Singer sewing machine, fingers aching. The city's pulse seeped in, trucks rumbling, girls bickering, the metallic screech of brakes at every corner. People below my window hurried on invisible rails. I pieced my dreams together stitch by fragile stitch. Some days my stomach ached from skipping meals, the last of my cash spent on fabric. Other days I trudged to boutiques with my samples only to be dismissed, my work eyed as if it were lovely but useless. Sometimes I almost surrendered. Lying in my narrow bed, I'd hear my neighbor's laughter and wonder if it wasn't time to pack up, ask my brother for a job, stop fighting. The anger burned at my family's careful skepticism, my community's gentle dismissals, but underneath, a quiet, relentless voice urged me. "Stay with it." My friends kept me tethered. Hana, who modeled for nothing and brought cheap kimbap during photo shoots. Minyi, who lent his camera and labored over edits night after night. We sketched together, laughing through tiredness, the radio a soft buzz while hope paced restlessly in the room. Sometimes that camaraderie felt like enough. Still, most nights, I drifted into sleep chased by the echo of cold verdicts and fluorescent rejection. Then a hot July night, an email. A Korean designer, successful in Paris, admired one of my looks, a discovery made on a tiny indie blog I'd all but begged to feature my work. She was putting together a small collaborative pop-up in Paris and offered me a slot, 1 piece, 1 week, no pay, just exposure. I stared at her email for an hour, disbelief and wild hope tangling in my chest. I called my mother, voice trembling. "I'm going to Paris. They want my designs, my clothes on models, real ones." She didn't get it, not at first. Did they pay? Was I safe? She worried aloud about shame if I failed. It's a huge risk, Jisoo, you're still so young, what if? But I had already decided. When I left for Paris, my suitcase was half full of fabric sketches rolled tight, and 2 new pieces with my name hidden inside the seams. Paris was all wide avenues and cigarette smoke, every street echoing with languages I couldn't follow. The pop-up was smaller than I'd pictured, but alive, glass, steel, and more creativity than I'd dreamed possible. The other designers impressed, but I didn't shrink. Confidence unspooled inside me. On opening night, a pale woman with copper hair circled my jacket, shoulders exaggerated in pearly blue, a skirt sewn from old hanbok silks. "Is this yours?" she asked. I nodded, nearly breathless. "You have a strong vision, no fear." She handed me her card. The next day she wrote she was a senior editor for a major fashion magazine. Momentum built. My jacket appeared on a Parisian-style blog, then printed in a glossy feature. A Seoul editor asked for an interview. Boutiques messaged to stock my pieces. I sewed through the night and shipped my first box home. Strangers tagged me in photos of themselves wearing my clothes. The world, once a closed circuit, suddenly stretched wide. 3 years blurred by. There were failures, shipments lost, a disastrous business deal, nights so lonely I could barely eat, but always a rising determination. Memories of that original rejection became less oppressive and more of a challenge I wanted to rise above. Success marched in quietly until one day I saw my label in the window of a well-known Parisian boutique. I realized I'd made it. Not perfectly, but honestly, inch by inch. 3 full years after Paris, I came back to Seoul. The late-night flight gave me a broad view of the city, golden and blue lights ribboning beneath my window. I didn't tell family when I'd land. I wanted space. The taxi driver made shy conversation. I drifted between memory and anticipation, passing the old streets and blocky rooftops that meant home. At sunrise, I walked through my mother's neighborhood, the bakery with its tins stacked high, the soju bar my father used to visit, the familiar corners unchanged. At a street stall, the woman frying hotteok glanced up, then recognized me. "Jisoo, your mother says you're some kind of model now." I laughed. "Designer in Paris." She smiled, handing me an extra pancake. The sweetness filled my mouth. For maybe the first time, I tasted real, gentle pride, so different from before. Word flickered outward. My mother's friends invited me to family dinners, church bazaars. I caught sideways glances, half awe, half old disbelief. My cousins teased, "The Paris girl can finally buy drinks." My aunts pressed, "So you really sew these?" People pay, their suspicion now tinged with curiosity. I learned rejection endures, it just shifts shapes. Sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, but ever present. A month after returning, my old high school announced a charity auction. My mother asked if I'd donate. I offered one of my Paris window pieces, a vibrant jacket and skirt. Gossip sizzled, "She's giving the Paris dress to the school." The night of the event, I sat beside my mother, surrounded by faces from childhood. Teachers, shopkeepers, classmates who'd once whispered about my odd fashion. The auction began with small things, flowers, fried chicken coupons. My set waited, swathed in cloth. When they finally announced it, voices hushed. The principal pulled away the cover. Colors flashed, blue, red, shifting with the light. The silk glowed beneath the cold auditorium bulbs. A pause. Mr. Lee, who'd once muttered about my wasted talents, bid first. His wife joined in. The bids went higher than anyone had expected, outpacing the laughter, then trailing into reverent silence as the price rose above most monthly salaries. My neighborhood at last saw value in what I did. As numbers climbed, I looked around. The faces that had haunted my ambition now wore something new: surprise, pride, even apology. The set finally sold to a woman I barely knew. Applause was generous, if a little embarrassed. When my name was called, I stood, eyes sweeping the crowd one last time. The humiliation from that first investor panel, the years of worry, even the gentle teasing fell away, only peace remained. Afterward, people gathered to shake my hand, praise my success, ask if I designed for celebrities or would soon open a Seoul boutique. Some apologized for doubting, others joked as if they'd always known I'd succeed. My brother, hands bigger than I remembered, hugged me roughly. "Guess you weren't just playing dress-up after all." He grinned, pride plain despite the tease. My mother reached for my arm, tears in her eyes. "You did well," she whispered. "I was scared. I only wanted you safe, but you kept going." I hugged her back fiercely. "Thank you for worrying. I needed your doubt as much as your hope." That night, heading home, I retraced the streets I'd walked after that terrible first pitch. The neon lights looked warmer, the air a softer blue. I paused outside the tailor shop where I'd bought my first spool of thread. The elderly owner looked up, smiled, and waved. I pressed my palm to the glass, waving back. Behind me, the city thrummed quietly with life. I stepped into the night knowing I belonged, not only to Paris or Seoul or my craft, but to each rejection, every struggle, every hand that steadied me when I stumbled. That was home now, and I walked forward, content with everything I'd gained and everything I'd lost to get here.